Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. Pleased to be back at the ICD annual conference. The last time we had this conference, as Mark said, it was 2019, when we were talking about the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. I've been involved with the ICD since 2007. And I also admire the management of ICD for doing such a very great gathering every year. It's not easy, and bringing speakers from all around the world. And I actually admire them very much. So congratulations again to you, Mark, on this. And now a disclaimer. My remarks this afternoon represent my own personal views. It's not necessarily those of the institution I'm affiliated with, the National Defense University, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, or the United States government. So it is only my own personal views. It is basically an academic kind of a discussion. Now, in probably a little over 2 weeks, Afghanistan marks the first anniversary of the takeover of power by the Taliban in Afghanistan. During the past 1 year, Afghanistan went deeper and deeper into chaos. Politically, it's fragmented. It is lacks domestic legitimacy or international recognitions. The power, those who are in power, are not on the social contract with the Afghan people, but solely because they are dominated by force. Economically, it is in chaos. 97% of the Afghans are going under they're facing the food insecurity, and the country is run by international donations. And so far in the 1 year, I think the United Nations and the United States provided humanitarian assistance through, not to the Taliban government, but through international NGOs and other charity organizations. So the country is not standing on its own feet economically. It is dependent on outside handouts. Socially, the country is in a chaos. Education has suffered. The health and education system, which was mostly dependent on outside help, with the stopping of outside help, it is not working. Taliban not offering services in health or education organization. In the human rights, is the worst situation in the world, and particularly violating the human rights of the women in all aspects of life. For Taliban, it was easy to fight and overthrow a weakening government, a divided government. But it's very hard to replace a government that will offer effective governance and provide services to the country. Well, many years ago, in two other cases, in France and also in Abu Dhabi, when I was talking on the track 2 with the Taliban, they were presenting themselves that they have changed, their policies are moderated. Maybe there are some people that still believe that way. But the way that they came to power through military victory, the situation is totally changed. They are going step by step away from the commitments they made at the beginning, whether it was in the Doha during talks with the United States or with some Afghan leaders. That's understand. I think in order to measure the way they are going to, the direction that they are going to, is to look at the statement of their recent clerical gathering, which took place in 29th of June to 3rd of July. There, the statement indicates that their hardline policies are similar to what they had in 1990s. The policies that eventually actually paved the way for their collapse. But now the situation is different. The context is different. It's not 1990s. The one question is, I will talk about two major questions. One, are the Taliban, as the international community is calling on them to change, are they willing? Or if they're willing, do they have the capacity to do that? Second, what the outside world is doing, what the outside world can do. What is willing? Are they willing and can do something? The third is an outlook. What can happen in the immediate future in Afghanistan? I'll try to be brief on these issues. First of all, are they willing or capable of doing? Because the world, yesterday, I think we have probably will see the statement of the Tashkent conference, where 20 countries represented, including China, Russia, United States, Pakistan, India, and others. The statement, again, calls the same thing, three things. First of all, that broaden the base of the government, include other political groups, other political parties, other ethnic groups into the government. Second, respect human rights, including the rights of women in Afghanistan, right of education, right to work, and so on and so forth. And third, contain the activities of international terrorist organizations in Afghanistan. These are the three issues that actually as the conditions for the world to recognize them as a responsible government. No country so far, even the country that have helped them a lot, Pakistan, have not recognized them as a legitimate government of Afghanistan. Yesterday, Tashkent's statement actually again emphasized that there's no recognition yet to be extended to the Taliban government. So then, can they change? Can they meet these conditions? First of all, there are a number of factors that actually are working against this. First of all, any insurgency that comes to power through military victory usually becomes a hardliner and controlled center. Because when they come through military victory, it means that there is no support, public support. If you look at the surveys in the past from 2002 all the way, the Asian Foundation surveys, it's all online, never the Taliban were popular for more than 11% in the country. On the other hand, the memory of their government in 1990 is still alive in Afghanistan, and they are doing it again. They are implementing this again. So the gap is there's no domestic recognition or acceptance of the Taliban. When you are not accepted by the population, what do? You resort to force, control. You use all instruments of control in order to be in power. Second, are they able to include other groups? They cannot, because they believe that if other groups come, because they will undermine the way of the control that they have, and then they have to share something with others, and they are not ready for that. Third, There are internal division between them. There's one group that they actually led the negotiations for peace, started in Doha. They were committed to get into serious negotiation for political settlement with the Afghan government. And however, that didn't, they didn't bring the kind of a settlement that everybody wanted to. On the other hand, that kind of negotiation weakened the legitimacy of the government, and a government was mostly dependent on outside assistance, even with a legitimacy. Sometimes Afghanistan is a democratic country, yes. There was democratic institutions, but only elections or just lip service cannot bring democracy. It was a trapping of democracy, not a democracy it lost. Yes, they held elections several times, but every time they rigged the elections. And then their legitimacy was mostly because of the international support of this government to stay. And the alternative was the Taliban, and that was something the international did not want to do that. So part of the legitimacy of this government was not the democratic base of the government. It was because of the outside international support, economically, financially, politically, diplomatically. When that international forces left Afghanistan, then that legitimacy is gone. So therefore, they came by force to Afghanistan. So now, when I say they're divided, there's one group that thought that we brought peace to Afghanistan, we brought the Taliban to Afghanistan because through that, the political process that gave them legitimacy, that gave them opportunity to establish relationship with other countries. On the other hand, the groups who were fighting, they said, no, we came to power through military victory. So we are indebted to the fight of our fighters, of the Talibs. So we get our legitimacy from God. We get legitimacy from our jihad. We get legitimacy from the people who helped us to come to power. So we are not listening to people, we are listening to our ideology. That clash between these two groups continues to be part of the dynamics of Taliban government in Afghanistan. And this actually, as long as there are other threats against them, there are no acceptance inside, no recognition internationally, they will not going to take this division, this dispute, and out of the government. They want to somehow manage that. They want to stay together because that is the key to their survival. Third is the ideology. For years, they fought on an ideology of the real Islamic, as they call it, the interpretation of Islam the way they wanted to do that. They have, for years, they were teaching their fighters that they are bringing Islam. Those who are in charge, they are not in real Muslim countries. Women cannot go in Islam to do work in the government. Women should not go to higher educations. Women should not mix with women. Women should be. That is something that they've taught them for years in order to energize them to fight against that government. How can they change that mentality? Against that mentality, whatever step they take, they believe it's a threat to their survival. And in the same time, they were involved in a relationship with international extremist groups, Al-Qaeda, the other who helped them, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, the other Salafi groups, that they helped them. All these men, they cannot survey their style all of a sudden. Yesterday, in the 2009, the clerical meeting, there was one thing that their leader said, and I quote, "The success of the Afghan jihad is not only a source of pride for Afghans, but also for Muslims all over the world." So it's an inspiration, it's also inspiration for all extremist groups around the world. So they cannot say that. So therefore, that is the reason that even if they want to change, and some people want to change, but these factors will work against these things. So therefore, we believe that in the near future, it's not expected that they will change despite international pressure, despite the fact that the international community call on them and they are not recognizing them as a government. Now, so what the countries are doing against it? You have to make a distinction between two groups of nations. One, those who are in the region, the neighbors and immediate neighbors, maybe. And then the groups who are not in the region, but they were involved, they're concerned about the situation in Afghanistan, Europe, United States, and others. Those who are in the region, they have two reasons to engage the Taliban, despite the fact they do not recognize them. First is trade relations. Trade relations in, I think, Iran, Pakistan particularly, have a major market in Afghanistan. So they continue to engage them for their trade relations. Despite the fact they are calling on them to change, but they do that call, when they do not accept that, do not heed those calls, this does not mean that they will sever ties, trade relations with them. So trade relation continues. Second, security. Many countries in the region see that some extremist groups, terrorist groups who are based in Afghanistan and the region are targeting their countries, Central Asian countries. There are groups that are eyeing changing the situation in Tajikistan. They are Tajiks. Many of them, after the victory of the Taliban, were deployed along the Tajik-Afghanistan border. Then there are groups like Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan. They have been active in Uzbekistan and they are based in Afghanistan, and when there is a chance, they go again. They have committed many terrorist attacks in Uzbekistan, they will do it again. From 1993 to 2000, when I was covering Central Asia for the Voice of America, I've seen them, I met them in Namangan, and they are very, very active there. Then there are groups against Iran. There are groups against Pakistan, like the TPP, Pakistani Taliban. And there are groups against China, the Islamic the movement of Eastern Turkestan, ETM. So these countries, in order to contain them in Afghanistan, want to have a kind of relationship with the Taliban. And they engage the Taliban just for these security reasons. But further countries, Europe, they have the luxury to wait and see. As for the United States, on the one hand does not recognize them, but there are three major, as the interest of the United States, they want to, for these interests, they want to engage the Taliban in Afghanistan. First of all, the United States wants to minimize the humanitarian and the crisis in Afghanistan. The United States is the largest contributor to the humanitarian assistance in Afghanistan. On the other hand, the United States does not want an isolated Taliban which actually undermine these interests with the counterterrorism, human rights, which is always the long-time policy concern of the United States, and then a broad-based government in Afghanistan. Why broad-based government? Some Taliban leaders said broad-based government is the internal issue of Afghanistan. No, it's not, because If there's no broad-based government, there will be no stability, does not come to Afghanistan. And instability create fertile ground for the activities of interest groups like Daesh, ISIS, and others who are eyeing the attack interest of the United States and its allies outside of Afghanistan. So for that reason, if stability does not establish in Afghanistan, that other interest of the United States and Europe will not be fulfilled. Now, those countries who are in the region, they are pursuing a low-cost diplomacy, low-cost relationship. China is trying to call on the world to United States unfreeze the Afghanistan financial assets, which was frozen. China also calls on the United States that, okay, get into reconstruction of Afghanistan. But China is not investing much. They are talking that they will invest in the mines in Afghanistan, mining in Afghanistan. But we know, what does it mean? Because when there was security in Afghanistan, they established a contract for the copper mines of Ainak. And when the security deteriorated, then they wanted to renegotiate that contract. And they did not want to invest unless it is very secure. In the case of Ainak, they were happy to invest in the mining as long as the 10th American Division was providing security in the area, and Japanese were paying the police there. When that was gone, they were not interested to it. So it's a low-cost kind of engagement in Afghanistan. Okay, they promise. Now, look, to compare this, the United States provided $55 million for the victims of recent earthquake in Afghanistan. China provided $200,000 for them. Take Pakistan. Pakistan is also, does not recognize Taliban as a government, but they are taking advantage of the situation in the country. They just started to import coals from Afghanistan when the coal export from South Africa stopped and the prices went high. They are going to get coal at a lower price, not a hard currency, in Afghanistan. At the same time, they are trying to manipulate the government the way that will secure the interest of Pakistan. With the TPP, the insurgency groups, Pakistani Taliban movement, they are using Taliban government in Afghanistan to bring some kind of understanding between TPP and Pakistan. And they have done that. Currently, because of the mediation of the Afghanistan Taliban, they have established a kind of a open-ended ceasefire with the Taliban. So these countries in the region are doing what is good for their interest. The other countries are waiting to do that. Now, what looks ahead? I think that there are challenges facing the Taliban in governance, in security, in economy. In governance, they have failed to build the capacity to provide services to the people. You know, when they were fighting as insurgents, they were not providing services to the country. The government would provide the services and they were getting benefit from it. And sometimes they were actually getting funds, cut funds from the development projects in Afghanistan just to provide security to the contractors. So they were not doing this. Now they are the same. So they do not provide services, and they are governing only. And the groups who are providing security around the country, they are taking matters in their hands. There's no legal process. Extrajudicial killing is abound. The On the other hand, Taliban have not created an army yet. They are groups. They are beholden by their commanders. Everywhere, it's a smaller government. And who suffers? The people who are not. They monopolize power. 95% of the key positions in the government belong to the Taliban. And out of this, only 86% of them are only Pashtuns, not other ethnic groups. 100, the position in the provincial governments and other key positions are all Pashtun Taliban. So this is something that they actually is isolated from millions of the Afghan population. This is a challenge. Can they survive? Can they sustain? People are now in a hard position because they are economically threatened. At the same time, they do not have the ability to rise against that government that they don't want. But this could change, maybe change. The other thing in security, they do not have enough power, enough forces to provide security everywhere, only through intimidation, deterrence, and fear. Only 70,000, 100,000. Then what happens? Many criminal groups, opportunists, join the Taliban and in the name of Taliban do not provide security. There are many bands, many thieves are now roaming the streets of Kabul, Jalalabad, Mazar-e-Sharif, and Kandahar under the Taliban name. They take matters in their own hands. In the economy, you see that according to the World Bank, the Afghan economy this year will be contracted by 50% to 60%. Public spending is reduced to 60%. So it means that the services, including health and education services, cannot provide it very well. These are challenges. Can they overcome these challenges or not? Some Taliban believe that they can tough it out. They can wait. They can use the hardline policies as a leverage for the international community to give them recognition. The international community is willing to engage the Taliban so to bring them out of isolation. But the dilemma is here. What thing should come first? The Taliban should change so that the international community will help them, or the international community will engage them to change them. This is the dilemma. There's no answer for this. So now, what lies ahead? There are speculations that since inside the country there are armed resistance against them, outside the country there are groups who are trying to revive the Doha process through negotiation with the Taliban. But so far, the internal resistance is good, but it's not been, expanded. In Panjshir and Andarawi and Baghlan, there are some resistance fighting with Taliban, but it is not at a level that could change the situation. They can always concentrate the majority of their forces to that one area and crack down and quell the system. Unless it is expanded to other parts of the country, which we don't know. The outside, there are two problems with the outside movements. One is that they are not united. And they are not united. There are 10 or 12 groups already in different parts of the country. Second, they are outside of the country. They are not inside the country. Third, many of them are those who have no good name because they were the one who failed to resist the Taliban. With all the army they have, with the police they have, with the international support they have. So therefore, Taliban do not think they're seriously of them. So, to conclude, for the time being, unfortunately, this hardline situation, the policies of the Taliban will sustain for the foreseeable future in the near. But in the long term, only those factors that can change, as mentioned before, then probably the situation will change. I'll stop here. I'll thank you very much for your attention later on today.